Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program to help you stay curious, connected, informed, live, and in real time. This conversation, like all of our Lunch Update programs, is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie. We'd also like to thank our Accelerate sponsor, Baker Tilly, and our small and emerging business sponsor, Easy Office Products. As always, these are recorded, and you can find them generally in the afternoon of the same day at madisonbiz.com. So if there's something that you want to see again, share, put out on social media, you can find it again at madisonbiz.com on our website. Coming up, we will be joined by Gloria Reyes for the second of two programs that are featuring Madison Mayoral candidates. But first, as always, a few chamber updates. You can join us for our next Advocacy in the AM, which is this coming Wednesday, February 15th at Boardman Clark. The program will feature a moderated discussion on the challenges, opportunities, and potential areas of innovation in building safer communities. Joining the conversation will be professional practitioners and community leaders that have expertise in public safety, including our police chief, Sean Barnes, our sheriff, Calvin Barrett, Tricia Kiplin, who's the executive director of the Wisconsin Department of Justice Office of School Safety, Dane County Circuit Court Judge Everett Mitchell, State Representative Sheila Stubbs, and Joel Plant, the CEO of Frank Productions. The event is free for chamber members, and as always, you can sign up at madisonbiz.com. Thanks to our host and Accelerate sponsor for that event, Boardman Clark, and our small and emerging business sponsor, Easy Office Products, for supporting the program. Now to our guest. Gloria Reyes most recently served as the CEO of Briar Patch Youth Services, stepping down in July of 2022 before announcing her run for mayor of Madison. Her previous experience includes 13 years of law enforcement as an officer with the Madison Police Department, a stint as deputy mayor for the city of Madison, and a 3-year term on the Madison School Board where she served as the board president. So with that, please join me in welcoming our guest, Gloria Reyes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. So let me kick it off with maybe the softball question, but why should the business community view you as the best candidate in this race?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I come with a holistic, approach and experience to the position of mayor. And I bring all those, right? I mean, not only do I have my experience within public service, but I have my grassroots connection to our community, right? From growing up here on the north side of Madison, attending Madison East High School. My parents were migrant farm workers, so they came here, right? And during the early 70s and attended Madison College, went on to UW-Madison. And so, and served in all my public service roles. I really have a holistic approach and understand the importance of having a strong economy and having businesses thrive in our community, right? Not just survive, but that they're thriving. And so part of my my plan, economic development plan, is to really retain, grow, and attract businesses into the city. And so we retain by working with our chambers, working with Madison Chamber, our Black, Latino, Hmong chambers. And one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to direct the city's community development committee to come up with 10 strategies of how we can help support our small and local businesses. And we're going to, attract, right? We're going to reinvigorate State Street. I've been talking to business owners on State Street for the past several months, and they're struggling. They are concerned about their future. And so we really need to focus on rebuilding State Street again, and provide a school to workforce pipeline into the trades, right? We have an opportunity here where there's a significant gap in people entering the trades. And so we have an opportunity to really, with my public school board experience, really understanding the need for young people to have choice in careers. And also make the public market accessible, right, to our small and local businesses. And then we're going to really focus on startups in the city, and bring back, right, and grow by bringing back big jobs in the city. Like we did Amazon, right? Amazon took so long to actually get approval through the city, but we need a plan we're bringing businesses together, that we're looking at systemic challenges within city government that are preventing us from building our economy and supporting our small and growing businesses in the city.
You talked about the State Street businesses and engaging with them. I'm curious, how else are you engaging businesses during your campaign? What's the outreach strategy to not just hear from, but be able to listen to?
Yeah. So I'm going to be meeting with the Black and Latino Chamber. I've already met with them one-on-one, but I'm going to meet with them together. I've been meeting with Dane Buy Local organization that helps support small businesses, meeting with their members, and then also a meeting one-on-one with business owners on State Street. I mean, after the shooting on the top of State Street, I went down every business and talked to their employees and talked to business owners about how they were feeling. And so that really is going to frame my mayoral priorities moving forward.
So pulling out, not just from business, obviously we're business organizations, our first question, but what do you think the top issues facing the city are?
Yeah, it's all of it, right? It's all connected. I mean, once I jumped in this campaign, I immediately reached out to all the neighborhood resource or the neighborhood associations, and it's been a grassroots campaign, listening to the residents about their needs, and it's all connected. It's just not. I hear about public safety, definitely that's number one. Yep. I hear about housing, affordability, but if you don't have a job that's sustainable and paying more than a living wage, you can't afford housing in the city. And business development, it's all interconnected, and so it really is. My focus is around business development. It is housing and public safety, and also our public schools. Right, every meeting that I go to with anybody, we talk about our public schools and really understanding that we have to have a public school system that is thriving for our city to succeed and be resilient in moving forward. And that's all that intertwined. Equity, right? Equity is also comes up significantly, in talking to our residents.
I want to sort of work in reverse on those issues. I have a sort of a question, broader question, but you said the schools, so I just want to unpack that a little bit. The mayor of Madison has very little say over this. Unlike some cities where the mayor appoints the superintendent or has full control, that's not the case here. Right. There's a separate body that you serve. So you've been in both places. You've been in City Hall, you've been in the Doyle building, so you know the differences. As mayor, with the experience that you have, how would you do it different than any previous mayor that would allow the city to have, I wouldn't say influence, but more input into the schools?
Yeah. Although the mayor doesn't have direct jurisdiction over the school district, we do have a responsibility as a leader to ensure that they're thriving, right? And so, as mayor, I'm surprised that we don't work closer together. And so
I sat on the city school board committee. I think we met one time in 6 years.
Yeah, we need to reinvigorate that. Like, we cannot have a committee that doesn't take us anywhere, right? We have to do something, and we have an opportunity as the city to invest in community schools, right? That's something that coming out of the Madison School Board is something that I invested in, right? Is community schools, and that is a direct connection of what the city can support. We also have an opportunity to really engage our most vulnerable students in our schools, those students who are out here committing crimes, stealing cars. We have an opportunity to work closely with the school district to ensure that they're receiving the services they need within schools, and then also connecting that to outside of schools. And so there are so many opportunities, and as mayor, I'm going to work closely with the superintendent and the school board to come up with a shared priorities and strategies of how we move forward as a community.
Does having a superintendent retire after only 3 years, does that make you nervous? Is that a canary in the coal mine, or do you think that's just a separate and detached from some of the things you're highlighting about the school?
Yeah, I'm shocked for the news still, right? And so I'm so sorry and sad to lose Dr. Jenkins. He did a lot of great work, and But we need to ensure that we have an infrastructure in place within the schools that support our superintendents, right? And we have to have a community that supports our superintendents. And so if we don't collectively understand the importance of our public schools and the success of a superintendent, we're going to continue the cycle. And so that does concern me. And I think we need to have a strong school board and a strong community wrapping ourselves around a superintendent that's strong and that can lead us forward.
I appreciate the insight. So I'm going to pull back to the things you identify. So Mayor Rhodes Conway identifies housing, transportation, climate, and public safety as her 4 big initiatives. And it really hasn't been that different than when she ran 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I looked at your website and it appears you share many of the same priorities: housing, public safety, climate, which you didn't mention here, but you mentioned on your website. So where are the major policy differences within there?
I think it's not just about policy, right? I mean, I think we have to have a mayor who understands implementation, right? Policy, if it's not implemented appropriately, there's going to be a constant disconnect. There's going to be unintended consequences from that. So that's the difference between me and the current mayor. Like, I know how to lead an organization, how to lead a city government internally to ensure that we are implementing appropriately. And so I think that's what's happening here, right? We are implementing these policies around housing that have specific unintended consequences without engaging with our residents, without engaging with our stakeholders. And that's not how you lead, right?
Is there, I mean, here you're saying housing, but is there one issue where you would highlight to say, this is how I would have done it different?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the zoning ordinance changes, right? I mean, I think changing the definition of how many people can live in a home, I would have.
It's what defines a family.
Defines a family, right? That does nothing to increase our moving people into home ownership, right? Particularly our communities of color. So I think what I would have done is engaged our neighborhood associations. I would have engaged other stakeholders in this conversation to really, and also, listen to our staff. Our staff at that time when we're saying that, no, that this is not going to give us a lot. And so I think that, I would have engaged better and made my decisions based on that, and really understand the unintended consequences that this has, not only on housing and not giving us what we need and impacting single family homes, but our schools. I mean, we've been down this road years ago where in the downtown Isthmus area, we lost single family homes. Students, I understand, need housing, and I support housing, but we lost schools because of that. Single families started moving out, enrollment went down. We have to consider these long-term consequences in our decisions and our policies. And so I think we need a leader that understands and can lead staff through change, can lead through crisis, can lead our community forward and move it forward together, right? It is, you can't work just on policies. Policies is a policy, but it is all about implementation and bringing people along with you.
I mean, this is some of the strongest contrast language I've heard you use.
Yeah.
And there's sort of 3 ways to run a campaign. I'm good, where you largely ignore your opponent and just talk about your qualifications, which we're not going to spend a lot of time on today because it's just, I think people can see your bio and see you are qualified for the job. There's no doubt.
Right.
I'm better. So it's a bit of a compare and contrast. And then she's bad.
Yeah.
Right. But which campaign are you trying to run?
I mean, I think it is it's a little bit of all, right? I am better. I have the experience in the city to be mayor. I mean, I've been here for a long time. Madison has prepared me for today. Right. And so I think, but I also feel that she's made a lot of bad decisions. We're going to be in a budget deficit in the next couple of years. We have to really talk about how we got here, right? The bus rapid transit system is not equitable, right? There are things that we are really making decisions around policy, but again, with implementation and no leadership skills to actually move our city forward and understand how change management works, right, in this city. We're going to continue down this road where it's just policy, and if it's just a policy, it's just performative. And we need to really understand implementation. And so there's a lot of implications that happen when you develop policies. And so she's made some bad decisions, and I'm the better candidate. I have the experience in leading city government. I did it for 5 years. And again, the city has prepared me for this today. And so that's why I'm jumping in this race, because I care about the residents of Madison. I care about our stakeholders. I care about our business community. Again, our business community needs to, thrive, not just survive in this post-COVID environment. Our employees need support. They're under a lot of pressure, and we have to go through to make sure that they are okay and understand the bigger vision of where we're moving towards as a city. If we don't have internally the skills and the buy-in that we need, it's not going to reflect externally. And so I really want to move through a performance qualitative analysis to really ensure that we are providing the best customer service, that we are based on the core values of our city, in providing basic services that our city needs. And so, but our employees need to see that, right? And they're under a lot of changes right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
In order to beat an incumbent, you have to have a pretty interesting coalition, a very diverse coalition,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's there's no way in this city to just say, I have got this core of, I can unseat an incumbent. What does that coalition look like for you? As it's coming together, either in a strategy or in reality, what does that look like? Where do you see the coalition? Who do you see lining up behind you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, when I ran my school board race, obviously 2 different races. But again, I ran against an incumbent, and it was a citywide race. It's actually, it includes students, it includes Fitchburg voters as well. But I think my base is the people that I have served throughout my years in service, right? It's a very diverse group of people. These are voters who are not loud. You won't hear from them, but they care about our city. They have been residents here for years. And they are the ones that I have attended a neighborhood association with to talk about public safety as a law enforcement officer. They're residents who I responded to an incident in their home or in their neighborhood as a neighborhood officer, as deputy mayor, as school board president. I think that's my base. People who know me, people who have had some connection with me, who I've built trust and relationships with. And so it's a very diverse group of people in this city. And my team is amazing. It's a grassroots campaign. I have engaged, as I mentioned, neighborhood associations and other groups in the city to develop my mayoral priorities. And so we're out there. I think it's not just one group or coalition, right? It is a widespread coalition in the city based on people who just want to elect somebody who they can trust, that can bring transparency, and who can lead our city.
So when you think about, to be a good candidate, you have to have qualifications,
Mm-hmm.
And sort of unapproachable. You have great qualifications. You have to have a coalition, right? You have to have voters,
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you're building that and feel
Mm-hmm.
confident in that. You have to have policy,
Mm-hmm.
that resonates, and it sounds like you feel confident in your policy. The other part of it is execution and the campaign, right? We pulled the fundraising records for
Mm-hmm.
both you and Mayor Rose Conway. Some of the lowest numbers on both sides
Mm-hmm.
that we have ever seen. Does that make you nervous that that this campaign seems to be off by a factor of like 50% from what we would expect, both a challenger and an incumbent to have going into
Mm-hmm.
a February primary?
I'm not too concerned. I think we just came out of a big election, right? And I think people were not paying attention to the mayoral race until now. And so I'm not too concerned about that. I think just from my past experience running for the school board, I didn't raise a lot of funds, but I did have people who came out to vote. And so I think that's what counts in this election, is people coming out to vote. And so I think, a couple of things, right? Like I mentioned, it's like people were not paying attention to the mayoral race. Now they are paying attention.
Sure.
And so I think things will change. And so, yeah.
So, I mean, we've seen it before where an incumbent had a lower start than you would expect, right? I mean, you expect an incumbent to have a war chest, and that's not the case here. You don't expect the challenger to have a war chest, but you expect them to be scaling. The only other time I've seen this happen was Cheslevich v. Soglin. Cheslevich just didn't fundraise, similar to where the current mayor is. And Soglin was able to come in and both raise a bunch of money, but he had almost universal name ID.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing how either you or any of the candidates gets to the kind of numbers that we would typically see in a mayor's race with this short period of time. I mean, we're talking about an April election. So how else do you communicate if you might not have those big dollar resources to, run the big television campaigns, the big radio campaigns? How else are you going to get your message out if not for those sort of big broadcast sort of air strategies?
Without those, yeah.
Typically I would say like you need $250,000 to $300,000 to run a successful mayor's race. I don't know that either of you are going to get to that. Maybe you will, and I'll be wrong. But just looking at where you are today, both of you, and how short of a runway you have, it doesn't seem to me that kind of money is raisable, particularly with, you're right, fatigue from November, and now we've got a Supreme Court race that's going to gobble up a bunch of money too. And so I'm curious as to, without $300,000 in the bank, how else do you get your message out?
I'm continuing to raise, and so I'm out there fundraising. But like I said, this is a grassroots campaign. We're going to be knocking doors. We're going to be out there, and so this is an opportunity for change in the city, and I need to continue to share my message through digital media, social media, and really rely on the grassroots and really engaging the voters day to day on the issues they care about.
I'm going to tilt back to both, background, but also policy. Public safety is a place where everyone says it's a goal. I don't think anyone can argue you don't have the most experience, right? I mean, you have the most experience in the campaign in public safety, and public safety is both real and perceived. Right? We, even a perception of a lack of safety can create real problems for an economy and for a community. It impacts livability. It impacts our ability to recruit and retain talent. And so, a couple of years ago, for the first time, the chamber board added public safety to our advocacy agenda. And something for, maybe it was just, we took it for granted as a community, but whether it's real or perceived, there is a prominence in public safety. Do you view Madison as a safe community?
I think generally, yes. But are we at a place where if we do not intervene, you see the trends happening now, right? Impacting quality of life challenges. And so generally, yes. But if you look at the numbers and you look at some trends around just, car thefts, right? Overdoses, opioid overdoses. I mean, it is increasing. So you have to really look at the trends. And so if we're not careful and we don't identify those and proactively find those solutions, we're going to be in trouble in the next 5-10 years. And so particularly in those car thefts, we've had young kids stealing cars who are coming out with felonies. Those are the very kids who are going to stay in this city. They're going to raise a family in this city. And so we have to really figure out why did we get here, and how do we prevent it into the future? And how do we intervene now with those young people who are going to be in this city with felonies? And also really support people who are coming up with a re-entry program where we are intervening so people are not on this cycle of incarceration. right? Supporting Sheriff Barrett's vision for the jail, and understanding that the city has a stake in that we have to have young people succeed in the city. And so I don't want to be too comfortable. All right. The violent crime trends, yes, Chief is saying that we're trending in the right direction. But, we are losing lives. And so victims, right? Victims of sexual assault, those are real for me as mayor. And so if we're seeing a trend, we need to combat that. And so that's why I'm elevating the Office of Violence Prevention within the mayor's office, because I want to catch those trends. We need safe neighborhoods. I talk to business owners, I talk to residents, public safety comes up all the time. And so we're always going to have crime. Things are always going to happen. We're a growing city, totally understand that. But I want to keep Madison safe. And so we have to take that seriously.
So you've been in a mayor's office, right? You've been
Yeah.
a deputy mayor. Did you have public safety in your
Yes.
portfolio? So you have public safety in your portfolio. You referenced the police chief who has the responsibility. And
Right.
much like the school district, there's a bit of a separation between the school district or the mayor's office and the decisions that are made at the chief's office. There's funding funding potential, funding requirements. So, but as mayor, much like we talked about with the school board, how would you treat that relationship differently, or would it be the same with both expecting different outcomes? What would you do different other than elevating this office within the mayor's office without getting in the way of what the police chief is tasked to do?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the Office of Violence Prevention is very a community approach. And, officers, the chief, I trust the chief. He has the experience to lead the police department, right? But the Office of Violence Prevention is really the public health response. It is community interventions and to support their work. I think the difference is that I will support Madison Police Department publicly. I will support them at a city council meeting when there is a grant coming up, and we're just in circles about how the grant should be used on bus tickets or certain other things that the grant can't be used for. And so I think in order for the police chief to do his job, we need a mayor that's going to support him and help council members understand the vision of the police chief. And so right now we don't have that. And so he's out here, the chief is out there on his own. And we can't have that as a city. It's not good for him. It's not good for our police department. And we need a mayor that's going to help and support our police officers in public, in front of the city council. Of course, we're not going to agree on everything, but we have to provide some support publicly for our police department and the chief in order for him to do his job and give him the resources that he needs.
You mentioned equity before on your priorities. It's certainly a place where the chamber is launching a lot of new initiatives around DHEA and trying to
I love that.
equity as an outcome, but collecting the data that tells us what gets measured is going to get done, and how do we get to a true sense of equity. Where in business, equity is ownership, right? And so you own a seat at the table. Nobody can take it away from you. It's not given to you. It's not granted. It's not loaned. It is yours. As equity is real for you as a Latina, as one of the most prominent Latinas in our community, you have grown up here. You have lived it. You've experienced the inequity of Madison. So I'm curious, as one, about how you see that as a differentiator, but also you talked about one of the things you're going to do when you come into office is to work closely with the minority chambers, the Latino chamber, the Black chamber, the Hmong chamber, and task your staff with coming up with 10 ideas. I think you said. One of the things that we have been pushing is actually now one of our top agenda items is to make Madison the best place in America for entrepreneurs of color to own a business. Do you think there are areas, we'll come back to the equity question, but do you think there are areas in Madison, or there are opportunities within the city budget or in city policy that we could take a big swing at something like that and truly make it a reality, where this is the best place for a person of color to own a business?
Are there certain things that we can do to make that happen? Yeah, I mean, I think we have to look at our business development team, right, within the city, and ensure that we are not just providing monetary resources, right, but that we are putting long-term strategies in place for our businesses of color to survive, right, to thrive. And so in that business development office, we have to go through an equity analysis and really figure out where are we putting our resources and how do we put the experts in places to help support, you know, our small businesses. Like I said, the public market is an opportunity for our young, our small businesses of color, and by providing mentorship, right? So that they can sustain their own families. And so we can do that here in Madison. Of all places in this country, Madison can do it. We can do it right.
So back to the equity question. How do you, as mayor, how do you see the opportunity of taking that lived experience and bringing it into the mayor's office and using that lens to make decisions for a better Madison? What does that look like for you? How does that, a lot of people, everyone says equity.
Yeah.
I don't know that many people are truly delivering on it.
Right.
And so how would you deliver on it?
Yeah.
City?
Yeah, definitely. You know, yeah, everybody says equity. And I do want Madison to be on the top 10 list for people of color to live, right? And we can get there. You know, based on my experience, I mean, I have built equity within, you know, like you said, my personal experience, and then also in every profession that I've held, right? I know how to implement equity and lift that up. And so as mayor, I will bring back all the good work that I did when I was the deputy mayor, overseeing the racial equity and social justice teams. We were making progress on using an equity analysis on every decision that we made, every policy that we made. Train the city council on how to use an equity analysis approach, and to ensure that we're not making these decisions and having unintended consequences. Having robust conversations with city staff about their decisions and their direction around equity. And so, I mean, for example, the transit system, right, is not, the rapid redesign was not equitable. And that was because we did not run it through an equity analysis in the forefront. We should not be building anything without ensuring that equity is leading the direction. And so it is really a direct focus, strategic priorities within the city that I would bring. And I've done it. I've done it in all my careers. Briar Patch, you know, we set policies around ensuring that we were an inclusive environment for our LGBTQ plus youth, our Black and Brown employees that I hired who had lived experience, right? We changed the whole dynamic of Briar Patch. And so that's exactly the kind of work that I would bring into city government and continue the work that I did.
One of the most powerful tools that the mayor of Madison has is the city budget. Right? It's a lot of money.
Right.
Other than rising debt service, which we'll get to in a second, a lot of it's discretionary in the sense you can spend it on your priorities. And if some people would say, I would agree that a governmental budget is is a roadmap to what you care about, right? It's not just a budget. It is, it's a living, breathing document of the values that you espouse. Talk to me about how you would approach the budget as mayor.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we just got off talking about equity. When I was in the mayor's office, we really started that work on moving through an equity process, equity lens process. So we had all of our department managers present their budgets with a focus on equity. And so they would go through a process, they would present to the management team. And so that's how we start really building and implementing equity within the city. You're right. I mean, the budget does reflect our priorities and what we value. And so I think that knowing that we're going to be in a budget deficit, significant budget deficit in the next couple of years, I'm going to rely on our finance team to really provide the information on what they recommend. They come in, giving me 5 recommendations of how do we get out of this budget deficit in the next couple of years. I mean, that's the first thing I'm going to do, because that's going to be very problematic for our city. I am not going to sacrifice our city services, streets, garbage, police, fire, those basic services that our city residents deserve and pay for. I'm not going to sacrifice those areas. And so definitely not laying people off, right? And so I think it is going to be a different time for the mayor, for me as mayor, to actually make some tough decisions that we should have been making the past 4 years. And so we have been spending these federal funds on these one-time funds on these long-term projects, and we just can't do that. And so it's going to really hurt our city. And so 4% increase in property taxes, right? It's hurting our seniors. And I've talked to Black homeowners who, are struggling to keep up and stay in their home. And so yeah, it's going to be a tough budget, but I'm going to ensure that our city services basic city services are not cut.
I mean, it's hard to imagine a scenario where there isn't going to have to be cuts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a bit of an illusion that there will be more one-time money coming. I think that's over, and particularly now with the divided Congress and a potential highly contested presidential race that could tilt back to the Republicans. I think it's unlikely that there's just going to be a windfall of money that are given to cities again to smooth over some of these budget potholes, I'll call them. So it's either new revenue, and we're limited on where that can come from. So it have to be some kind of creative revenue sources, or it is going to be cutting. I think those are the sort of the realities of it. There's also another challenge that's developing, which is we're borrowing more. And used to be, we'd say you don't want to have more than 12% of your operating budget go to debt service. So we think about it as our homes. How much of your money is going, how much you're putting on credit cards in order to, and what does that monthly payment look like? And can you afford it? And, when I was on the council, it was 12% was kind of the standard, kind of creeped up to 15%. Now it's,
16, 17.
It's going to be heading towards 18%. Not sustainable that, that 1 out of every $5 that's coming into the city from tax dollars is going just to pay debt service with interest. So I'm curious about your fear of, even if you were to figure out some novel solution to the budget, the down the road looks as you got a lot of debt service coming too as well. How do you manage that on top of these new revenue sources, or having to cut things that aren't basic essential services?
Yeah, I mean, of course we're going to have to make tough decisions. I mean, I hate to see where we're at with the debt service, like 17, 18, when we've been averaging around 12% for years, 12, 13, 14%. And so we have to really get back to that. And that's going to mean some significant cuts. And so I think the bus rapid transit system is really, in the long term, really going to impact us budgetary. And so we have to really figure out what that looks like. I mean, every mayor in the past has wanted the bus rapid transit system. Of course, they want it, but we have to really relook at that and see if we can continue to fund all the operational costs that are involved in this bus rapid transit system. I mean, management team, just staffing, that whole thing into the future is going to be problematic. So we'll have to make some tough decisions in the next few years, and we'll have to do it as a community and not impact our residents in the long term.
So it's early April. You've won. Got a 4-year term ahead of you. If you are fast forward to the end of that term, what does success look like? How are you going to measure whether you were successful at the end of the term? Yeah,
I think that we are going to be on the top 10 equity list of somewhere of people of where a place of people of color can thrive and families of color can thrive. We want to be a Madison that is, we are responsible, fiscally responsible, budgeting, making smart decisions, that we are building housing to keep up with our population growth, but it's also where they focused around affordable housing. And so people who work in the city, who can live in the city, and where we are moving young people into the trades, into providing options into the trades, and being able to make a decent living wage to raise their family in Madison, and a strong economy, a strong business development, where our businesses are thriving, right? They're just not surviving. That we have that State Street has been reinvigorated, where we have a pedestrian mall that is, where people want to be there, right? Even in the winter months, in this beautiful day, right? We're enjoying businesses and coffee, and where people go to hang out, right? That's what it was when I was a kid. And we want to bring back those values of a place where everybody belongs. And State Street is our central place. And so a public market that is, beginning, and we're starting to move our young entrepreneurs in there so that they can sustain themselves and their families.
The other side of the coin in city government is you've got you have what's called a weak mayor system. And I truly believe that's, people don't necessarily see it because the mayor's prominent, the mayor is seen making all the decisions, but in our form of government, the mayor can't really do anything without the city council, right? City council has to approve everything. Yet increasingly the council has ceded a lot of authority to the mayor's office. It's just, I will make a statement, I'm not asking you to necessarily agree with it. I would think that we have seen a degrading of our legislative bodies. And I would say from Congress all the way down to the school board. I don't know that the best of us are running our legislative bodies. That creates a challenge for a mayor. You have been on a legislative body on the school board. You have been in a mayor's office and an executive office where you had to work with a legislative body in the common council. Talk to me about how you strike that balance, and knowing that you can't do anything alone as mayor, how do you build those inroads, and how do you help our legislative bodies live up to their potential? Yeah,
I think we the council and the mayor have to come together and really come up with a strategic plan of developing the vision for the city. Where do we want to go? And we have to continue to align ourselves in that direction. We're not going to always agree on specific policies, but we have to be on the same place and really deciding on where we want our city in the next 5 to 10 years. And we need to do that together, right? That's going to take time for us to really do some strategic planning around that. And that's how you get them, our city councils on board and the mayor, and then also training. Our city council members need training. They need to understand how their fiscal decisions impact the rest of the city. And they need to really understand the day-to-day of how their policy decisions impact the implementation. And so I think training is significant. It's not just like the basic training that they go through, really, it's extensive training and understanding what their decisions, how their decisions impact our community. And so, but you need a strong mayor, right? You need a strong mayor that's going to stand up for the voices of residents and City Hall during those city council members, to guide them, to really remind them of why we're here and what we can and cannot do. And so it's not just a facilitating a meeting. You need a strong mayor that's going to work alongside city council and guide them along.
We will talk about the April election, but there's a February 21st primary election, because there's more than 2 candidates. So in closing, any message to the voters, the people who are listening, about what they can do to help in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I hope you appreciated our conversation today. Go to www.reyesformayor.com. I need your support. I hope I can earn your support. Please engage me with any questions that you have. And just remember, I mean, we were promised change 4 years ago, and we haven't received change. Now it's time to elect someone who was raised in Madison, someone who cares about the residents of this city, and who has the experience to lead us, and we move Madison forward together. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, Gloria Reyes, thanks for joining us today. We
Yeah.
certainly appreciated the time with you. Thank all of you for joining us. If you'd like, as always, as I said, this will be on our website later this afternoon. Stay safe out there with, there's another band of weather is what we hear. But also, as always, not just thank you for tuning in, thank our guests, but also want to thank our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, for supporting that. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of this beautiful snowy day.